Okay, so I've got this function f of x equals 3x cubed minus x. And I want to know, is the function even, odd, or neither? That's the question, okay? So how do I determine this? So an even function is defined to be f of x equals f of negative x. An odd function, you've got to know this, okay? You got to memorize this, all right? An odd is f of x equals the negative f of negative x. And if it doesn't satisfy one of those two things, then it's neither, okay? So here's how we check. Literally everywhere I see an x, I plug in negative x. So I'm going to compute this and see if it's the same thing. So just to rewrite here, f of x is 3x cubed minus x. Now, there's a process to calculating this because I'm not going to tell you, is it just even or is it just odd or is it neither, right? I'm going to ask you to figure it out. So what I like to do is first, I check for even, okay? I check for even first, and I'm going to show you why in just a second. But how do I check for even? I plug in a negative x everywhere I see an x. So when I do this, I get 3 times, and then parentheses, negative x cubed, minus, and then parentheses, negative x. Okay, now when I plug this in, I have to simplify. Negative x cubed, so negative, 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 makes a negative 1. So I have negative 1 times 3, which is negative 3. And then I have x cubed, okay? Over here, I have minus and a minus, which make a plus x. Now, I have to ask myself this question. Does this function, f of negative x, does it equal f of x? Well, as you can see here, this and this, these two, are not equal to each other. So no, it's not even. Oh, man. Well, if it's not even, what's the second thing I check? Second, I check for odd. Now, the reason that I check even first is because once I've checked even, okay, I've put in a negative x for x, the only thing I've got to do to check for odd is multiply this whole thing by negative 1, okay? Because once I multiply that by negative 1, well, guess what? That's negative f of negative x. And I'm checking to see, does this equal f of x? And if it does, then it's odd. Okay, so let's check it out. So if I multiply f of negative x by negative 1, that means everything in here, everything in this box, negative 3x cubed plus x is multiplied by negative 1. So all I got to do is change the signs of each piece in here. Negative and a negative whenever I distribute it in. So understood negative 1 here. I get 3x cubed. And then a negative 1 times positive x is negative x here. Okay, so this is negative f of negative x. Okay? Now, when I look at my original function, what was my original function? Right there. What do we see? These two things, f of x is equal to negative f of negative x. So if this is the case, what do we know? F is odd. Okay? So f right here is odd. So I'm done. All right, if it's odd, it can't be even. And if it's even, it couldn't be odd. Okay, so if we had come to this point and we figured out, oh, look, it's the same, then we would have said it was even and we would have been done. But since it wasn't, the second thing I check is to multiply through by negative 1 to see if it's odd. If this had not have worked, maybe it didn't equal to the original, then I would have circled neither. Okay, so that's my process on how I check for even or odd functions.